At 71, you'd think Pierce Brosnan would be slowing down. But what he just admitted about his wife, after over 2 decades of marriage, left fans speechless. It wasn't dramatic. It wasn't part of some viral interview. It slipped out in the most unexpected way and sent social media into a frenzy. For years, people whispered about them, about her. They said she'd changed. They said he hadn't. They said things Pierce never repeated, but never forgot. Because while the public made their jokes, while the tabloids ran their side-by-side photos, while anonymous internet users typed out cruel things they'd never say in person, Pierce Brosnan stayed silent. Until now. And what he said, it wasn't bitter. It wasn't angry. It was something much more powerful. Because it came from a place of love, a place of loyalty, and a place most Hollywood marriages never make it to. He didn't have to say it, but he did. And when he did, people didn't laugh anymore. They listened. Because Pierce Brosnan finally said what fans had always suspected about his wife. And it was everything. Their story doesn't start like a fairy tale. It starts with heartbreak. In 1991, Pierce Brosnan lost his first wife, Cassandra Harris, to ovarian cancer. They had been married for 11 years. He loved her deeply, and her death shattered him. They had 3 children together, 2 of whom he adopted from her previous marriage. Losing her left a void he didn't think would ever be filled. Friends say he withdrew. Hollywood saw him as dashing, charming, always the gentleman. But privately, he was broken. He was a man carrying quiet grief through elegant tuxedos and red carpet smiles. And then, 3 years later, he met her. Keely Shaye Smith wasn't a starlet. She wasn't a rising actress looking to land a Bond. She was a journalist, grounded and graceful, with a warmth that drew people in. When they met at a beach party in Mexico in 1994, something shifted in Pierce. She wasn't trying to impress him. She wasn't dazzled by him. She just saw him, and in that, something began to heal. Their connection was immediate, not flashy, not orchestrated, just real. They dated for 7 years before marrying in 2001 in a quiet, private ceremony in Ireland, far away from the cameras. They raised 2 sons together, Dylan and Paris, and built a life that looked nothing like what Hollywood expected. Because here's the truth. Most people didn't think it would last. Not because of Pierce, but because Keely wasn't what the public imagined for him. She wasn't a model. She wasn't an actress. She didn't fit the mold. And over time, she changed. She gained weight. She stepped out of the spotlight. She focused on being a mother, a wife, and a human being, while the world watched from the sidelines and quietly judged her. But Pierce never changed the way he looked at her. And that's where the story becomes something else. Because the love they shared didn't just survive the spotlight. It survived the internet. It started with whispers, quiet at first, a red carpet photo, a side-by-side comparison, an article headline too cruel to forget. Keely Shaye Smith didn't look like the same woman she was in 1994. And to some people, that mattered. To Pierce, didn't, not even for a second. As the years went on, the tabloids got bolder. They used phrases like, "let herself go." They ran photos of her in bathing suits with unflattering angles. They compared her to Pierce's on-screen Bond girls, forgetting, of course, that acting isn't reality, and beauty isn't a contest. Online forums called her unworthy of him. Social media trolls wrote disgusting things beneath paparazzi photos. And while the noise got louder, Pierce remained completely, defiantly silent. He walked red carpets proudly with her on his arm. He smiled in every photo. He wrapped his arm around her waist and kissed her cheek. Without hesitation, without shame, without flinching. To the outside world, she had changed. To him, she was still the woman who pulled him out of the dark. And then one day, he finally said something. It wasn't a press release. It wasn't an angry rant. It was a single quote in an interview. Asked how he felt about the public comments on Keely's appearance, he said, simply, "She has my heart forever. And not just for her looks, because of who she is." And suddenly, the world had to sit down. Because for the first time, Pierce Brosnan reminded people what love is supposed to look like. Pierce Brosnan never needed to defend his wife, because in his mind, there was nothing to defend. He wasn't interested in shutting down critics. He wasn't looking for sympathy, and he certainly wasn't going to entertain the idea that his wife's worth could be measured by her waistline. But over the years, the noise got louder, and sometimes, even the quietest man has to speak. In another interview, rare, soft-spoken, he was asked directly if he ever felt pressure. Not as a man, but as a Hollywood man. The kind who'd been surrounded by models, who played James Bond, who had women half his age thrown at him for decades. His response: "Keely and I have been through everything together. I love every curve of her body, and every line of her face. She is the most beautiful woman I've ever known. Not because of how she looks, but because of who she is." There it was. Simple, steady, devastatingly clear. Because Pierce wasn't just in love with the woman he married in 2001. He was in love with the woman she became in 2024. And that is something Hollywood doesn't celebrate often. He never said it with flair. He never clapped back. He never needed headlines. But the people around him, they noticed. Close friends described him as fiercely protective of Keely, especially when the press got ugly. One longtime family friend told a UK outlet, "He hates when people make comments about Keely. He gets visibly upset. He once told someone to leave a dinner party after a joke went too far. He doesn't tolerate it. Not even as a whisper." To the outside world, Keely's appearance was changing. To Pierce, it was evolving, because their relationship wasn't built on lust. It was built on life. Together, they had faced loss, joy, parenting, aging, and still woke up each morning wanting to be near one another. And then, during a promotional interview just a few years ago, he was asked how they keep the romance alive after so many decades. Pierce smiled, slightly mischievous, and said, "We still do it 5 times a day." The interviewer blinked. Twitter exploded. Headlines twisted it instantly. Blogs ran with it. Comment sections went wild. But what no one seemed to catch was the context. He wasn't talking about what they thought he was. He was talking about kisses. Every morning, before coffee, after lunch, between errands, before bed. It wasn't a ritual. It was instinct. They kissed 5 times a day. Sometimes more, sometimes less, but never 0. Because for Pierce, love was physical, but not in the way people assumed. It was presence, touch, closeness. "When I kiss her," he said, "I remember every reason I married her, and every reason I'd do it again." What had started as a cheeky soundbite became something bigger, because it reminded people what love really is. Not dramatic gestures, not filtered photos, not performative perfection, but small things, daily things, the things people forget to do after 20 years together. And that Pierce and Keely never stopped doing. They've traveled the world together, watched their children grow up, shared quiet mornings, messy kitchens, and decades of private joys no camera ever captured. And somehow, through it all, Pierce Brosnan still looks at Keely like he did in 1994. Maybe even more so. They meditate, they garden, they dance in the kitchen. He writes poetry, she takes photographs, and in the middle of their simple, beautiful life, there is only one constant: each other. Pierce has said that Keely saved him, that after the loss of his first wife, he thought love was over, that the emptiness would never go away. But she proved him wrong, not with grand gestures, but with presence, with gentleness, with patience. She walked with him through grief and brought him back to life. And the irony? She never tried to be anything but herself. She wasn't trying to fill a void. She wasn't trying to fix him. She just loved him, exactly as he was. And over time, that love turned into something rare. Not infatuation, not obsession, but trust. That's why, when asked why their marriage has lasted so long, Pierce said, "She's still my favorite person to talk to. That's the secret. If you still want to talk to them after 20 years, you picked the right one." It wasn't always easy. Fame isn't gentle. The internet is cruel. But their love survived it all because it wasn't built for cameras. It was built for mornings, for rituals, for 5 kisses a day even when no one is watching. So now, at 71, what did Pierce Brosnan finally admit? That he never once doubted her. That the world changed, but his heart never did. That no matter how much weight she gained, how many years passed, how many cameras tried to catch them off guard, she was still the most beautiful woman in every room he walked into. He admitted what fans had always hoped was true, that this Hollywood leading man wasn't just playing a role when it came to love. He was living it. And the most powerful part? He didn't have to say any of it. He didn't need to make a statement. He didn't need to prove himself. But when he did finally speak, it was like the world took a breath. Because in an industry where love is often shallow and fleeting, Pierce Brosnan reminded us what it really looks like. It looks like consistency. It looks like respect. It looks like choosing the same person over and over again, even when the world tells you not to. They mocked her. He didn't flinch. They questioned her worth. He kissed her harder. And after all these years, the secret wasn't grand at all. It was 5 kisses a day, every day. For more of the latest news, check out this video.